My opponent, Governor Gavin Newsom. Come on. Let's be gracious. Let's be gracious in defeat.
That is Larry Elder, the guy who was running against King Gavin in California. The election was yesterday, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, will survive the recall, according to all of the polls and all the media. Obviously, there's still ballots to be counted, but everything is showing that King Gavin will survive. Also, The Atlantic went out with a really interesting report that came out a couple days ago on hospital COVID numbers that are severely inflated. We'll get to that. And also treason in the administration, Trump administration, and currently in the Biden administration. General Milley making news again. All that and more on this episode of Daily Caller Live with yours truly, Jobob. It starts right about now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for joining us on today. It is September 15th, the year of our Lord 2021. 2021, when everything goes back to normal. Everything's normal again. Joe Biden has reinstated normalcy around the country. Of course, that is sarcastic. Things are everything but normal. The Afghan withdrawal, on top of many other things, still plaguing the Biden administration. We've got a lot to get to today. King Gavin Newsom out in California survives the recall. I have lots of thoughts. I'm very familiar with the race and California elections and California voter policy as a whole, and have some critiques of what went down. I'll say this out right now. No, I don't think voter fraud swung the election to Gavin. Gavin Newsom is a Democrat governor in the bluest state in the country. And I say that because no Republican has any seat in any statewide office. They have supermajorities in both houses. Democrats do. So it's not a surprise that Gavin Newsom is going to survive the election. However, there are some pretty big concerns that need to be addressed eventually regarding California's election system and their process. Also, like we mentioned, The Atlantic, not a right-wing news organization, I just want to be clear on that, has a really interesting piece out about hospitalization numbers regarding COVID, especially over the last 6 months. Really, really interesting. Have to get to that. And also, if you've been paying attention at all last day, the new Bob Woodward book came out that shows General Milley, who is now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Biden administration, did some interesting things under Donald Trump, allegedly. Again, this is according to the book. The Pentagon obviously is denying everything, and I would deny it too if I were in General Milley's position. But we'll get into that later on in the show. Before we get into the California election, I've got to tell you about capitalist propaganda. Now, you may be thinking, capitalist propaganda, isn't that a bad thing? Propaganda, isn't that a bad word? Yeah, if you're AOC. But apparently, we have to defend capitalism now, which is a thing that I didn't know we had to do. So with that, you got to go to capitalistpropaganda.us, grab all the gear that tells your socialist friends that their ideas totally suck at capitalistpropaganda.us. A lot of fun designs. This is the just retro capitalism, capitalist propaganda, the arcade game. This one's probably one of my favorites. Go ahead, use your iPhone to tweet about how much you hate me. Lots of stuff. You're welcome. Love capitalism. Capitalism rocks over at the Capitalist Propaganda store. Head on over there right now to, again, tell your friends that their socialist ideas totally suck at capitalistpropaganda.us. Get all of the gear. There's also some really funny stickers that I'm not going to show you because you've seen them a ton of times before. But head on over there. Again, capitalistpropaganda.us. Help support the show. Keep letting us do what we're doing. Without further ado, we opened up the show with a Larry Elder clip. Larry Elder was the front runner in the California recall election that happened last night and addressed supporters. Let's hear a little bit more from Larry in his speech yesterday. Actually, we'll just start it off from the front. It's not long. It's 20 seconds. So let's hear from candidate Larry Elder.
My opponent, Governor Gavin Newsom. Come on. let's be gracious. Let's be gracious in defeat. And by the way, we may have lost the battle, but we are going to win the war.
That's Larry Elder again addressing his supporters last night after the recall was decided of King Gavin Newsom in California. If you're not familiar, I call King Gavin Newsom instead of Governor Gavin Newsom because for the last year he's been acting like a king. Even got sued in a circuit court in California and ended up losing that lawsuit. Was eventually overturned by a higher court, but that appeal is still going on in California as they are still under a state of emergency. But this out of California yesterday, the Daily Caller's Andrew Trunsky reporting polls showed that supporting Gavin Newsom leading those wanting to recall him by just 0.2% as recently as August 11th. So as recently as August 11th, there was a 0.2% margin in the recall effort as COVID-19 cases again surge and wildfires continue to ravage the state. But as Elder became the race's clear Republican frontrunner over candidates ranging from former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer to Caitlyn Jenner, scandals and accusations soon followed. Of course, Larry Elder has denied all of those scandals and accusations. But nevertheless, the Democrats used the normal tactics that politics brings forth. Larry Elder's ex-fiancée accused him of domestic violence a week after Newsom began to regain his polling lead, which obviously, helped Gavin Newsom to overcome whatever hurdle he might have been facing. Again, I said it at the beginning of the show, this is not a shock. This is not a surprise that Gavin Newsom came out ahead and ended up surviving the recall. California is probably I don't know what constitutes as the bluest state. But again, there are no Republicans in any statewide office, and Democrats have supermajorities in both houses of the legislation. So I don't know if you can get any more blue. And of course, Gavin Newsom, the Democrat governor, would benefit from that massively lopsided split. Trump himself said Tuesday that Newsom will probably win because California election is totally rigged. I don't agree with the president there, but we'll talk about it because there is some truth there in the difficulties surrounding California's elections. Elder on Monday urged his supporters to donate to election fraud websites. Statistical Analysis, the website that Larry Elder promoted, says it has detected fraud in California's resulting in Gavin Newsom being reinstated as the governor. The site read Monday, one day before the first results were tabulated. That, again, is coming from a report from the Daily Caller. Look, here's the bottom line. You won, Gavin Newsom. Shocker. In the bluest state in America, you came out on top. And here's the thing. Of course, Gavin Newsom has had some major oversteps in the way he's governing California. And of course, conservatives want Gavin Newsom out. However, I want to point out some silver lining here. And if anything happened during this recall election process, Larry Elder did show the rest of the world from elections here till the foreseeable future. Larry Elder did benefit our electoral process as a country as a whole. And I'll tell you why. The silver lining here, to me, is that identity politics is now dead. It's done. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people who would say, yeah, identity politics is stupid. And it's been dumb for a long time. However, what Larry Elder did in California and the treatment that he received from Democrats in California would show that it's not about race at all. Larry Elder would be the first one to tell you. He doesn't want you to vote for him because he's black. He doesn't want you to vote against him because he's black. He wants you to vote for him or against him because you either love his policy ideas or you don't. That's what it comes down to. But of course, for the last, I don't know how many decades, since Reagan, Democrats have been pushing this identity politics agenda on their main voter bloc. Not their main voter bloc, but one of their main voter blocs being minorities. And what they've said to the community that I'm a part of is, if you want to support minority causes, you need to vote this way. And look, it's the first minority congressperson in this seat or the first minority governor. I never thought that mattered, and nobody thinks that matters, especially now. Barack Obama was the first black president. Yeah, that's significant. But at the same time, if you think that Barack Obama got less votes because he's black, I think you're horribly misguided on that issue. Same thing with Hillary Clinton. I would say that Hillary Clinton got more votes because she's a woman, not less. The whole identity politics thing has torn Americans' political view of the system completely apart. But what this recall election did in California was essentially end any credibility that identity politics have. Because Larry Elder was treated so poorly by the Democratic establishment and the media, anything they say in the future of, well, if you don't vote for this person, that means you're racist, or if you don't vote for this person, that means you're sexist. No, because California had the opportunity to have the first black governor in office. Again, I don't think that matters, but some people think that matters. And that was crushed by the Democratic state in California, by a cisgendered white male in King Gavin Newsom. LA Times, if you remember this, called Larry Elder the black face of white supremacy. Come on, get out of here with that. Supposedly, we're trying to fight for equity. Again, I don't think that this is something. I don't think equity or equality of outcome is something we should just strive for no matter what, as plenty of people on the left do. Nicole Hannah-Jones, Ibram Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, all of your prominent lefty race-baiting figures would say. But of course, that's not true. And the Democrats proved that in California's election by the way they treated Larry Elder. A couple days ago, Larry Elder had an egg thrown at his head by a woman in a gorilla mask. Black man walking down the street gets an egg thrown at his head by a white woman in a gorilla mask, and nobody said anything about it. Identity politics is dead now. We will be using the California recall election to reference. For future example, anytime somebody says you have to vote for the minority because we need to promote equity or whatever they say is completely irrelevant now. In that California went with a cisgendered white male. Which again, I think despite the fact that Gavin Newsom stayed in power, I think this is part of the silver lining. Also, one of the things that can be thrown back in the face of a lot of your lefty type, especially in the media, is the whole big money in politics thing. Look, I don't think big money in politics is the best thing for the country also. I happen to agree in a lot of ways, saying that big money in politics is a problem that needs to be confronted somehow. I don't know how you do it. But the people that tend to say that big money in politics needs to go away and big, evil, mean corporations and big companies and business leaders throwing big money into politics, they just did the same thing in California. Gavin Newsom spent $75 million, outspent the entire recall effort by like $40 million. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's insane. You want to talk about big money in politics? Here's a great example of it. So it's not just one side who has big money and big corporations and evil corporations and evil capitalism, down with capitalism, people might say. But again, the California recall election serves as an example that identity politics should no longer be a thing. The complaint about big money in politics solely coming from the right is no longer a thing. That's just what this election is showing us. Gavin Newsom also had 700 full-time field staff on the ground in California ballot harvesting. If you're not from California and you're like, what the heck is ballot harvesting? Check this out. This is crazy. when you have a mail-in or absentee ballot, you yourself can either put it in the mail or you yourself can drop it off at a ballot collection facility. Again, all of this got turned on its head during COVID, and some states are reverting back to what they were normally. But the whole mail ballot thing, I would tend to say, is very secure for the most part. Ballot harvesting, on the other hand, allows any person to go door to door and collect ballots and turn them into the ballot box. And if you can't wrap your head around how that might be insanely problematic, I don't know what to tell you. I turned my wife and my ballot in to the city clerk's office, and I was thinking that I was going to get turned away because I didn't have her sign the top part of it, which says that I can turn in her ballot. Turns out I had to sign it. So theoretically, I could have just gotten anybody's ballot and turned it in. Now, I mentioned this in the beginning of the show, and I'm going to stick to it. I don't think that voter fraud or finding out voter fraud would have closed the gap. But in California, there are a lot of election laws that are highly questionable. We have motor voter, where the DMV, if you go to the DMV and get your car registered or your license renewed or whatever you need to do at the DMV, you automatically get registered to vote. And we also send out ballots to every registered voter. So people who have no idea that they're registered to vote get ballots in the mail. And on top of that, anybody can turn in anybody's ballot. You see how that might be potentially problematic? Again, I don't think that fraud would have swung the election back the other way. I think Gavin Newsom, not surprisingly, Democrat governor, won in the most blue state in the union. But what I am saying is that the problem that these laws have is you lose faith in the election system. If it's easy to commit voter fraud, it doesn't matter if voter fraud actually happened. What matters is we have faith in the integrity of the election process. The potential for voter fraud is just as bad as voter fraud itself. That's my stance, and I'm sticking to it. Also, again, if you're not listening in California, voter fraud is illegal pretty much everywhere. Ballot harvesting is illegal pretty much everywhere else. And so maybe the last thing that silver lining might see is maybe, I'm not sure if this is true, but maybe this will pressure the Supreme Court to take up the ballot harvesting issue in California that opens up the election system to some pretty questionable practices. You win some, you lose some in California. Unfortunately, King Gavin is going to remain in power, and elections have consequences. That's just the reality of the situation. If you really feel strongly about it, we've got another crack at him in 2022. He's going to be running for governor again, and I would imagine that he will be running for president as soon as he can get. This is a tangent. I wasn't expecting to go here, but I said at the beginning of the presidential race, as soon as Joe Biden got the nomination, the one person, I stand by this, but I was saying this at the beginning, the one person that wanted Trump to win more than anybody else, more than anyone else, was Gavin Newsom in California. Reason being is because if Trump were to win, he would be in office until 2024. Gavin then could run in 2024 for president as a sitting governor of the most populous state in the union. Now that Trump lost, he's going to have to run against Kamala Harris in 2024, which doesn't look good for him. The vice president is probably going to have an edge on the Democratic primary over King Gavin Newsom. So he's going to have to wait till 2028, regardless of the Kamala Harris wins. If a Democrat wins again in 2024, Gavin can't run in 2028 either. That would put him at 2032, which would make him a very old former governor. So, again, sorry, didn't mean to go there, but the person who wanted Trump to win most in 2020 was King Gavin Newsom in California. But he will be remaining in power. I got to move on to the next thing here. This is really interesting coming out of Atlantic. And I want to say that it's coming out of Atlantic because it makes a difference. Atlantic is not a conservative news outlet by any stretch of the imagination. The Atlantic is very liberal, which is fine. They get to do that. But I thought this article was really interesting, especially with the numbers regarding COVID that are now increasing around the country. You've heard on all of your cable news stations that COVID hospitalizations have been on the rise around the country. Here's what The Atlantic has to say about that. Our most reliable pandemic number is losing meaning. A new study suggests that almost half of those hospitalized with COVID-19 have mild or asymptomatic cases. Holy cow. Meaning that The Atlantic, not Breitbart, not Fox News, not OAN, is saying that half of hospitalizations with COVID-19 is hospitalization with COVID-19 and has really nothing to do with actual COVID. Some patients need extensive medical intervention, such as getting intubated. Others require supplemental oxygen or administration of the steroid. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. But there are many COVID patients in the hospital with fairly mild symptoms too, who have been admitted for further observation on account of their comorbidities or because they reported feeling shortness of breath. Another portion of those patients in this tally are hospitalized to something completely unrelated to COVID and discover that they were infected only because they were tested upon admission. How many patients fall into that category has been a topic of much speculation. In August, researchers from Harvard Medical School, Tufts Medical Center, and Veterans Affairs Healthcare System decided to find out. There's been this whole argument, debate, whatever you want to call it, of deaths with COVID and deaths of COVID, hospitalizations with COVID, hospitalizations of COVID. They're completely different things. If you've been to the hospital in the last several months, 18 months, you'll know that you get tested as soon as you walk in the door or are admitted into the hospital. Now, you could be a hiker that fell down a mountain and broke your leg, and you go into the hospital because you have a shattered fibula, and they test you for COVID. And you might come back positive, and your reaction might be, oh, that's interesting, I feel fine. But you would still be included in the national hospitalized for COVID stat. You would be included in the COVID hospitalization stat that everybody keeps talking about constantly if you have a broken leg and just so happen to test positive for COVID. The study found that March 2020 through early January 21, the proportion of patients with mild or asymptomatic disease was 36%. So about a third, a little over a third of people in the hospital who were counted as COVID hospitalizations, according to this study from Harvard, Tufts, and Veterans Affairs, not right-wing extremist organizations, said that a third of people last year were counted as COVID hospitalizations but had mild to asymptomatic cases, meaning they were not there for COVID. From mid-January through the end of June 2021, however, that number rose to 48%. 48%, half of the people in the hospital for COVID, as listed by the statistics, shouted about by everyone across your media landscape, were there for something else or had asymptomatic cases. This is unbelievable. In other words, the study suggests that half of all hospitalized patients showing up on COVID data dashboards in 2021 may have been admitted for another reason entirely, or had a mild presentation of the disease. Increase was even bigger for vaccinated hospital patients, of who 57% had mild or asymptomatic disease. But unvaccinated patients have been showing less severe yada, 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 yada. Vaccinated versus unvaccinated, I'm not going to get into that. I tend to think the vaccine is a good idea, but also the government shouldn't mandate it. This is not an anti-vax show. I've said that many times. But what the Atlantic is saying is that almost half of the hospitalization, look, the hospitalization number is a good indicator. Death rates are obviously a good thing to look at, but it's a lagging indicator because that's the last thing that you would do. Cases, who cares about cases? Cases are dumb at this point. The fact that we have cases are up in so-and-so or whatever, who cares? That doesn't matter at all, because cases are so contingent on the variables that exist. How much testing are you doing? If 100 people get tested one time, yeah, you're going to find less cases than if 100 people got tested 10 times. That's just the way that statistics works. Also, asymptomatic cases, especially if you're vaccinated, are through the roof. So cases mean absolutely nothing. Hospitalizations, on the other hand, are actually important. However, what The Atlantic is arguing is that important number of hospitalization COVID rates is increasingly less important, as it shows that half the people in the hospital aren't there for COVID. They just happen to have it. Oh, man. This is nuts. And of course, the Biden administration, again, is using the numbers from the hospitalization rates to push more COVID measures, vaccine mandates, all of that sort of stuff. Also, what's going on in the Biden administration is something kind of interesting that you might have heard about yesterday. The Biden administration, in its cabinet, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, had some allegations come out about him in the new Bob Woodward book. In that book, Bob Woodward alleges that Mark Milley inserted himself into the nuclear chain of command when Donald Trump was the president. Now, if you don't remember Mark Milley, I pulled a clip that you might remember that we can take a look at. This is General Mark Milley.
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually.
So remember, this General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, made headlines a couple months ago for saying, I'm pro-critical race theory. I want to understand white rage and what happened and all that sort of stuff, which would be a testimony. Maybe I should find that clip. I didn't even think about it until just now. But in his screed, he said, I want to understand what happened on January 6th, and what white rage is all about. That would be a pretty good indicator that what Bob Woodward is alleging, that after January 6th, General Milley inserted himself into the nuclear chain of command in between Donald Trump and any sort of nuclear activity going off. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense that he may have actually done that. But really, really good reporting coming out of the Daily Caller. We'll get to that in just a quick second. I need to tell you, though, first about capitalist propaganda. You may think, capitalist propaganda, isn't that a bad thing? Yeah, well, yeah, if you're AOC, I guess capitalist propaganda is a bad thing. But apparently, we have to promote capitalism nowadays. That's just what we have to do. So if you head on over to Capitalist Propaganda, you can get all of the gear that tell your socialist friends that their ideas totally suck. It's up to you to help spread capitalist propaganda to defeat the empire. Just some cool designs with capitalists at the forefront. You're welcome. Love capitalism. Capitalism rocks. Also at Capitalist Propaganda, you may have noticed that I'm wearing the same shirt that I've been wearing for the last 3 days, the Corruptifornia t-shirt, which is also available at Capitalist Propaganda. It's one of my favorite t-shirts, and I'm wearing it in honor of the recall in California and Gavin Newsom and his corruption with the unions. But Corruptifornia is also available at capitalistpropaganda.com. So head on over to .us. Head on over to capitalistpropaganda.us, where you can get all of the gear that tell your socialist friends that their ideas totally suck. Help promote capitalism any way you can with capitalist propaganda gear. Back to General Milley. The general is now in hot water because the Bob Woodward book, remember, so Bob Woodward, I must have an infinite amount of people typing an infinite amount of words constantly. This guy puts out a book like every 2 months, it seems like. But a new book from Bob Woodward is out, alleging some interesting things about the now chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is a reporting from Anders Hagstrom from the Daily Caller. Woodward's new book alleges, according to the Washington Post, that Milley feared Trump might start a war with China, so he reached out to his Chinese counterpart and assured him that he would warn of any incoming attack. It also claims that Milley took action to limit Trump's ability to order a nuclear strike after January 6th. Again, from that same clip of congressional testimony that Mark Milley gave a couple months ago that sparked everyone's attention with critical race theory, in that Senate or in that congressional hearing, he said, I want to understand white rage and what caused people to assault this building, which again may provide some circumstantial evidence as to maybe this is true. Maybe it's true that he inserted himself into the chain of command. Trump derided the report as fake news, but said it would be treason if true. Again, Trump is out. Trump came out on, I think, Newsmax yesterday saying that I don't think the call to China happened because nobody in his administration was talking anything about attacking China. It's like, I would not, Donald Trump said, I would not do that. That's crazy. We had a clip of it, but the president got a little long-winded and a little bit rambly on there. The former president got a little bit rambly. So we figured easier just to explain it. Trump said, if the story of Dumas, Trump using some choice language, General Mark Milley, that the same failed leader who engineered the worst withdrawal from a country, Afghanistan, in U.S. history, if the story is true, then I assume he would be tried for treason, in that he would have been dealing with his Chinese counterpart behind the president's back, telling China that he would be giving them notification of an attack. Trump began. You can't do that. All of this allegedly in the Woodward book. Now, here's the thing. Nobody actually has a copy. Actually, I think Rachel Maddow, I saw yesterday, has a copy of the actual book. But all of this is potentially just publicity too. Just keep that in mind. For as long as we're being fair here, it could be that Woodward's publisher is brilliant at marketing, and everybody's now talking about his new book coming out. So there's that. Keep that in mind. There's been several of these instances where Woodward has these bombshell clips that are released by his publisher, and you read the book, and given the context, you're like, oh, that wasn't anything. So keep that in mind as long as we're being fair. Daily Caller continues to report 2 days after January 6th, he also reportedly instructed senior military officials not to carry out any order for a nuclear strike without clearing it with him first. He also reportedly discussed the safety of the nuclear arsenal with Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Remember, there were reports that came out that Nancy Pelosi was frantic after the January 6th riots, probably rightfully so, and started calling everybody, saying he's crazy. You gotta do something about it. According to a lot of people in her staff, the response from them was, ma'am, you know we can't do that. But again, this Woodward book alleges that General Milley took a phone call with Nancy Pelosi and tried to insert himself into the chain of command. Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, called on President Joe Biden to fire Milley immediately on Tuesday. Now, just for the sake of being fair, the Pentagon is denying all of these allegations, which I would too. If I were the Pentagon, if I were Mark Milley, I would also deny the situation. If you're saying that I committed treason against the country and super illegally inserted myself into the chain of command for the nuclear codes, yeah, I would be denying it too. So take that with a grain of salt. Josh Rogan from the Washington Post tweeted something interesting. Senior Trump administration national security officials told me on General Milley's reported secret calls with Chinese generals, it was dangerous for Mark Milley to do freelance diplomacy on China without involving any other senior officials dealing with China at the time. Again, this is a Josh Rogan tweet, reporter for the Washington Post. Milley was making these calls at a time when the U.S. government was in the middle of a very complicated discussion with and actions against the PRC, the People's Republic of China. For him to take this sort of action without any coordination is astonishing. The risk is Milley could have caused the Chinese to miscalculate or take some sort of action of diplomatic, economic, or military action with far-ranging consequences because he was giving them the wrong signal, having no understanding of the context in which he was making that call. Again, this is Josh Rogan's opinion of the Washington Post, saying that there's so many things, if this is true, there's so many things that could have gone wrong as a result of Milley's phone call with the Chinese military. Again, Trump says that probably didn't happen because there was no discussion within the White House of attacking China. But he says if it is, it definitely counts as treason. One thing that I learned, Milley is an advisor. Doesn't really have a whole ton of actual power in the position that he's in. Just a fun fact that I didn't really know. I guess I assumed that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff had a lot of power. But really, it's an advisory role, which makes the whole inserting himself into the nuclear chain of command even a more interesting thing. To wrap it up, I think Milley needs to, or somebody from the administration, a spokesperson, needs to get to a mic at some point today and talk about this. I would imagine Jen Psaki is going to be asked quite a bit about this at the press briefing today in a couple minutes. But somebody needs to say something and give us a little bit more insight into, hey, either no, this didn't happen at all, and here's the reasons why we can deny everything and it makes total sense, or here's how this is being misreported. Because in the sake of fairness, we want to give Milley and the administration at every level some sort of ability to respond, because Bob Woodward, respected author by all means, but a guy who's in it to make money. His whole goal here is to make money. So take that for what it is. But I think somebody needs to talk today about what's going on. Want to wrap up the show here today with meme time. Again, if you're not familiar with this, we bring on some memes that are hilarious. Just kind of wrap it up on a lighter note. You've been watching. It's a long day. You're working hard during the day. Maybe you work nights. Who knows? We want to end things on a lighter note. And for meme time today, we want to look at some photos from the Met Gala, the hoity-toityest of hoity-toity gatherings that happened in New York City on Monday, a couple days ago. The fashion is unbelievable there. And I say unbelievable not necessarily as a compliment. It is a, oh my gosh, I can't believe you wore that. What in the world is that? We've got a lot of great fashion coming across the runway. First, we have Kim Kardashian dressed as a Dementor from the Harry Potter series. So beautiful, so bold. Kim Kardashian wearing a chic body-hugging black bodysuit. Again, invoking the feelings and vibes of Dementors in the Harry Potter series to bring attention to the mistreatment of prisoners in Azkaban. How bold, how strong of her to speak out on such a pertinent topic. The next one is actually Elon Musk's wife, girlfriend, baby mama? I'm not entirely sure, but this is Grimes, who is seeking to invoke the power of the Winter Warrior as she seeks to protect the North from the invasion of the Lannister family. I don't know. I can't remember my Game of Thrones references. But Grimes, look at this. I don't know. This apparently counts as a fashion. And today she came with a sword to the thing. I would love to go to the Met Gala. I'm not sure if I would show up in a t-shirt and shorts just to spite everyone. Like, this is what I think about your fashion. Or if I were to just go completely the other direction and like go to the closest dumpster and pull out stuff and put a plastic bag on this arm and some used pants on this arm, wear two different sets of shoes. Oh, a bikini? Yeah, I'll throw that on too. And just walk the red carpet, being completely serious and calling it fashion. It's Derelict. It's a new designer from one Zoolander franchise. Oh, a couple more here from the Met Gala. Let's see who's another one that's fun. Oh, this one. Let's end on this. This is typical. Who wore it better, AOC or the Chick-fil-A bag? This is probably unfair, but such is life. AOC again showed up in a dress that said "tax the rich." Probably completely unaware. Dude, going to this event makes you the rich. $30,000 a plate, $275,000 a table, allegedly. You're rich. You're part of the rich. Given her $175,000 taxpayer-funded salary for Congress, that also puts her in the top percentile of earners in the United States. Dude, you are the rich. You're saying tax yourself, which maybe she believes that. Maybe she thinks that she herself should pay in more taxes. But one of the things, God dang it, not to go into this whole other thing, nobody ever says what the example of taxation should be for the rich. If the new congressional law passes, the new congressional tax code passes, it would put New Yorkers, the top New Yorkers, in what, like 63% of their income would go to state and federal taxes. How much more do you expect people to give up? I would imagine they're not going to stand for much more. Then you got the whole shrinking the tax base. 62% of Americans did not pay federal income tax last year, according to the IRS. But dang, that's another tangent we didn't want to get on. Anyways, AOC resembling the Chick-fil-A bag in her tax the rich dress. Again, the hypocrisy is astounding. Dan Crenshaw tweeted that it's just funny now, or I'm not even mad. It's just hilarious. The hypocrisy coming out of a lot of your Democrat leaders. That is going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for tuning in to this inaugural episode of Daily Caller Live with yours truly, Jobob. If you haven't already, go check out my show called Quality Control over on Daily Caller. It's great. I'm biased, but I think it's great. A weekly episode where we do a deep dive into all of your political and cultural news of the day. We did an episode on critical race theory, the border crisis, not crisis, vaccination mandates, all that stuff. We cover it in depth and give you a pretty solid 10 to 12 minute insight into all of the things surrounding any particular issue. So that's called Quality Control over on Daily Caller. You can find it there. We'll be right. Oh, we won't be back here tomorrow. We're going to take the next couple days off. I'm doing a thing at a place, and I won't be around. But we'll see you right back here, bright and early, depending on where you live. In Hawaii, I guess it's bright and early, 5 a.m. But we'll be back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Daily Caller Live with yours truly, Jobob. Can't wait to see you. Until then, have a great weekend. God bless America.